I want us to talk about, with the time we have left, this anti-lynching bill that finally passed in the year of our Lord 2022. We're finally getting this piece of legislation. I think the timing leaves a lot to be discussed. But what does that say about the United States of America? It took this long to get this type of bill to say that lynching is now a federal crime, a federal hate crime. And to add a little more context, it was initially blocked. Well, it has been blocked for years, but this time around, it was blocked by Rand Paul of Kentucky, Republican from Kentucky, and he finally withdrew his block, and the bill passed, and we're expecting it to be signed into law. Sister Ford, what are your thoughts on this bill?
You know, it's hard to fathom that it's 2022 and we're just now getting to this point where we can have legislation that makes lynching a hate crime, that there are people in our country that would oppose this after the racial terror that our ancestors experienced. Even when you look at Emmett Till's family, you know, fighting for justice, hoping to get someone criminally, someone held responsible criminally for what happened to him. And that didn't happen. And so they were advocates of this bill and looking to this as being a part of that legacy, you know, and the fact that it's taken this long, this many years, on one hand, yes, while it's a victory and it's a step forward for Black folks, on the other hand, it's a shame. It's a shame that it takes decades, and it takes how many Black people have been lynched, how much Black blood has been shed for us to say that this bill is important. It needs to be passed so that it can protect us. You know, I'm reminded of a statement that was made by George Floyd's brother, who is still campaigning to get the George Floyd Policing Act passed. Despite the global uprising, despite everybody saying things have to change, there's still no federal legislation that's been passed in response to George Floyd's murder, right? And so a few weeks ago, when he was here, Floyd's brother, waiting for the verdict in the trial for the other three officers, he made the statement that we have legislation, federal legislation, that will protect the bald eagle. Right? We have federal legislation that will protect a bird. But what legislation on a federal level do we have that will protect Black people? And so when you think about this and you think about George Floyd Policing Act, I mean, is it going to take 4, 5, 6 decades before we can get a federal policing act passed that protects us, you know? So it is, on one hand, it's a victory. I know that Emmett Till's family has been fighting for decades to get this passed. And so it's a huge step forward. It means so much for his legacy. But on the other hand, if this is the amount of time that it takes to get a federal bill passed, those folks who are lobbying for the George Floyd Policing Act, boy, they have a lot of work ahead for them.
That's right. That's right.
You know, Georgia, if history is any indication, you know, as we saw with this anti-lynching bill, you know, there's a reason why Dr. King said, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
And so I want to take us all back to December 6, 1865, when Georgia became the 27th state to ratify the 13th Amendment that ended chattel slavery in this country. My state, Mississippi, did not ratify the 13th Amendment until March 16, 1995, 130 years later, after the institution of slavery was deemed unconstitutional and illegal in this country. My state held on to it. That state that still flew that Confederate flag of white supremacy still held on to it. Rand Paul in Kentucky and all of this nation still hung on to that horrible practice of lynching because it was Black folks. When it comes to what the police does to members of our community, They are going to hold on. History is very clear about what they're going to do. That is why we must never, and Sister Ford, that is why we so need your independent, beautiful, strong, challenging voice every day to always bring to our attention what is happening in law enforcement. That's why what we're seeing in your state of Minnesota.
That's right.
They don't care about these children, but they can run out right now in the midst of a teacher strike and say, but we got $300 million. Police chiefs, tell us what you need. Tell us exactly what you need. Are they sitting down with teachers to say, what is it that you need? So in the face of us as a people, there's nothing surprising here. And this is why we must never, ever let our feet up off the gas of fighting for our equality here. In the words of Frederick Douglass, power will never be conceded, must always be taken in a struggle, and the struggle continues.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, Dr. Mack in Georgia, I don't want to close out this first hour without us getting our Black history in here. We normally start at the top, but we're going to end this segment with Black history. So, hey, Google, what happened today in Black history?
On March 9, 1841, in a court case argued by former United States President John Quincy Adams, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Joseph Sink and his men, who had been enslaved on board the ship Amistad. Born in Sierra Leone, Africa, Sink was sold into slavery in Havana, Cuba in 1839 and placed aboard the vessel. Leading a successful mutiny, but lacking navigational skills, their captives sailed the ship to America instead of Africa. When they were arrested, abolitionists raised money for their legal representation. Adapted from Black Heritage Day 4 calendar by author, lecturer, and civil rights activist Dr. Karl Mack.
So family, again, there was a movie made about this particular case, and that movie, again, is the Amistad. So when you go watch the Amistad, you'll be able to understand this case a little bit more. But what was interesting is you had a former president of the United States, John Quincy Adams, who absolutely, who actually represented Cinque and his men and ultimately got them freed.